Hello, welcome to Tuesday special edition. Actually, not just a normal edition.
Every edition is special with you.
It's super special because I'm not going to be here tomorrow, so you got to get your fill of JD today. Because yeah, I know, right? But anyways, we got lots to talk about today. Kiara, how you doing?
I am amazing. The news was super FUDdy. Like I got stressed out last night about if crypto might be dead again or not.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think
going down that rabbit hole continuously.
I think it's dead. We should probably all pack it in, call it a day.
I hope I can come up with another acronym for FUD because I'd like to keep doing this. We're going to talk about that, and then there's some cool news about CBDCs, stuff that I think is actually cool. Also, our map about CBDCs has really picked up steam on LinkedIn, which is not what I expected to be reporting here, but it's been shared widely, and people apparently really like that map. So I'm going to try to put together a map that people can contribute to so that if something is happening in your country, you can live update it. So if you're interested in working on that, message me about it. I'd be excited to work on it. So we've got CBDCs, we've got crypto's dead, as we already knew. And then we have some cool stuff that's actually happening in DeFi. So while crypto dies, all coins are fine.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay, welcome back.
No, I was going to shave my head for the summer, but then you'd have to wear a wig so that we could still use that image.
Please don't shave your head.
No, I'm obviously not doing that.
I was just going to actually say, in the spirit of appearances, it's about 85 degrees in here today. Our air conditioning decided to not work, which is obnoxious. So if you see me sweat dripping down my brow, I'm not nervous. I promise.
Maybe you are. Maybe you're like sobbing about crypto's death, thinking about
probably. It's actually tears. It's not sweat. Those will be tears if you see them.
What's 85 Fahrenheit and Celsius?
Hot.
Too hot?
Probably high 20s.
Okay, I was like over 30, 40.
Let me check.
I should know, but I never figured.
29.5.
Yeah, no one needs that in their life.
Freaking hot.
Great segue point is it's so hot that we might rebirth crypto.
Yeah.
Okay, did you know that Bitcoin has been declared dead over 400 times? The original one being in 2010.
Yeah. So here's where I struggle with this headline, the CNBC one, as I'm a huge Chamath fan, like huge Chamath. He's probably one of my favorite tech personalities, investors. I think he's super objective, like one of the most unemotional investors that I've ever seen. And he does All In Pod, which I'm a big fan of. So shout out to the All In Pod. Maybe someday we'll get on there to talk about crypto. But anyways, what I don't love about this is A, he's got a huge reach, and B, this is one of the first times that I think he's patently incorrect. Crypto is not dead. And I understand why maybe as a mainstream investment vehicle for the time being, it's paused, at least from a fund or VC perspective in many ways. Maybe not even VC, more so like in hedge funds and people just participating in crypto as an asset class. From an institutional or enterprise perspective, I think it's going to be very, very difficult in the short term for any new entrants to come in. The existing entrants, they have path dependencies. They're doing what they're doing. But I don't think we're going to see any new entrants. So
I say that this headline is actually really funny. I just need to intervene because although that did say crypto's dead, it's taken out of context. Like the title of the headline is "Crypto's Dead, announced by a tech investor." What he's saying is that crypto is dead in America because of the lack of regulation, and his statement is actually in response to Coinbase attacking the SEC yesterday. So a lot of like CNBC, Forbes, Bloomberg, they're all reporting on Chamath saying this because he is the personality, but they're not telling the whole story.
Yeah, I mean, again, context is everything, but I don't think that's even a remotely effective way to characterize what's happening. I don't think crypto is dead. I suppose if you were to make some assumptions on what he meant by crypto is dead. I mean, he previously was a bull though. Like he had been talking about Bitcoin replacing gold and so on and so forth. And then he's kind of changed his tune, which I totally understand. I mean, the regulatory environment, we talk about this all the time, but the regulatory environment surrounding crypto in the US right now is a disaster. I mean, the signals are very mixed at best. Whether it's going to go one direction or another. The enforcement actions are, in many cases, puzzling and somewhat hard to understand how that's happening, like why it's happening. It's a very tough time in the US. So do I think crypto's dead? No, absolutely not. But do we have some headwind here in the short term? Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about the Coinbase SEC business. So this is, some might say that it's kind of a vengeful tactic in terms of the Wells notice. But actually, in July of 2022, Coinbase put forward a petition to the SEC requesting better regulation. That petition, which I read through, had over 50 specific questions that they thought the SEC could either publicly engage on or advise on. So it's not as though this was a one-pager being like, tell us more. This was a very specific, here are the activities that we're interested in. Here are the activities some of our partners are interested in. Can you please help? The SEC has done nothing. They have not responded at all. They responded and said that they received it, I guess, but they didn't actually respond to any of the questions or the petition itself. And so Coinbase is now saying, are you going to respond? And they have actually taken that to a court, pressuring the response. And this is what Chamath was also talking about, is if there's no regulation, if there's no response, if there's only enforcement, then crypto is dead in America. Because like you say, how are you supposed to be a new entrant or even operate without duress, right?
Yeah, you're almost making me retract my statement about Chamath, but I still don't think calling crypto dead is productive. But having said that, happy to debate it and discuss it on the All In Pod. So maybe we'll get invited. But all joking aside, I think we've talked about Coinbase and their approach to this whole thing. I mean, they have to take a certain stance because of their current business operations. Regardless of that, I mean, this is one of the biggest criticisms from lawmakers with respect to the SEC, because the SEC says, if you want clarity, come and ask, and we'll help you figure out how to come into compliance. But this is a massive example of how that's not the case. I mean, I can understand if some Joe Schmo, me, or you, Jane Schmo.
I was gonna say, do I get the feminine version of that?
Yeah, Jane. Is it Jane? I was trying to think like, what's the feminine version of Joe? Josephine? Maybe it's gender neutral Joe. Anyways, so
it's gonna be our new mascot, is gender neutral Joe.
Right. So if no, it's not. So just kidding. I can't accept that. But now I lost my train of thought here. Okay, so the problem is if some nobody went in and submitted a letter to the SEC, I can kind of understand why it's not top of the priority list. Coinbase, largest crypto participant in the US, publicly traded company. Like, come on, like of all people, Coinbase should deserve a response. And Coinbase has some of the best attorneys and policy and lobbyists in any financial industry, let alone just crypto. So, I mean, it's not like this is being like written in a crayon and sent on a piece of loose leaf. Like this is.
So it's quite good. We can share that petition.
We can share it, yeah.
And then I'll also do just a summary of the petition for people who don't want to read the whole thing. If you're not interested in the 50 questions, but you want to get the gist of it, I'll share that out later this afternoon.
Yeah.
Before we move on from this, what is interesting too, from the perspective of Coinbase and why they're continuing to push this aside from just leaving America and losing that whole market share, right, is that they are quoted in saying it is widely recognized, including by a sitting SEC commissioner, which is the mom of crypto, right, that existing SEC registration and disclosure requirements are incompatible with digital assets, which differ fundamentally from the stocks, bonds, and investment contracts and securities, blah, blah, blah. So if you find any of the news, you're going to find these quotes. And I just thought I would kind of frame it. Is it only the one commissioner who's looking out for crypto?
So it's Hester Pierce is who they're talking about. And she's the one that has the confidence to publicly oppose and present public statements of her dissension here. And I mean, she's been crypto friendly for years.
Oh, yeah.
And like I've seen her present multiple times on the topic, and many of the kind of approaches that protocols and groups have been taking is has been based on what she kind of has said as like best practices to at least stay out of, the bullseye, so to speak, from regulators until we have some clarity. But I mean, it's a complete 100% dissension, essentially, to Gensler's position. And the chair of the SEC has an extraordinarily high amount of power in this whole thing. It's not like they're just one vote of the group, I don't think. So it's kind of interesting. Like, does Gensler speak on behalf of the SEC when he says these things, or is that just his personal opinion? Like, that's where this is all a big problem. All of it is anecdotal. All of it's based on, whatever we can assume from certain comments that are being made. But is that an opinion, official opinion? Is that a personal opinion? Like, is that highlighting what could be policy at some point? We don't know. And that's, I suspect there's probably more dissent amongst the SEC, but I mean, Gensler's, he's cornered a lot of power. So we have to wait and see. Oh, I think you're rugged. All right, we're going to move on. Kara's rugged. We're going to talk about our favorite.
Rug.
Yeah, you're still kind of rugged. All good. So we're going to talk about our favorite topic. Whoop, whoop, CBDCs. That wasn't a very smooth transition, but all good. So anyways, CBDCs.
That's on me. I wanted to keep talking about the phoenix of crypto, but of course I was silenced by TELUS fiber optic. So clearly I was not supposed to.
Yeah, big tech is against your opinions. So it's all good. So we're now going to talk about CBDCs. So the first article, or the first piece of news that came out, is this Reuters thing. European Central Bank says it can compensate banks if there's a deposit flight. This is like the most absurd commitment ever made. Like, what are they going to do?
Okay, this one is so weird. So just for like a bit of context, digital euro coming into play. They want the digital euro to be a retail solution, not only an institutional solution. So if you want more info on that, watch our CBDCs episode from a few weeks back. But it's supposed to be retail. There are quite a few retailers who have opted in. You'll be able to pay for things with an app or a digital wallet of some kind. But those retail individuals aren't allowed to keep any of the CBDC euro. They're required to give it back right away so that they can't hoard it. Yeah, and part of this is because they don't want them to be pulling assets out of the traditional banking system. So they don't want commercial investment to leave the traditional banking system, so they won't give them CBDCs to work with long term.
Yeah, so this is is exactly the problem. This is exactly the problem, is that they're trying to keep incumbents happy and everybody's pockets filled on the legacy systems that are the reason blockchain has evolved, is because those systems suck and they don't work and they're super inefficient. There's better ways to do it. So saying, hey, here's a better way to do it, but you can't stop doing it the shitty way. Like, what is the point? It's just an extra unnecessary step if you can't actually hold any of the underlying asset on your balance sheet. And so this to me is ridiculous. Like that, we've been talking a lot about, how we thought, the EU and European Central Bank seems to be taking a fairly
never mind.
Yeah, fairly acceptable approach to this. Just kidding, because this signals to me what we suspect is the undercurrent of all of this CBDC, and that is control.
Isn't it just a wild bank bailout? They're like, we can inject, I think it was $1 trillion back into the banking system, the EU banking system. Like, no, don't do that. And if you actually read the article, it says that amount of money will regulate the liquidity in the system, but won't cause any actual like marketplace movement.
Yeah, but that feels like, it'll cause inflation without a doubt. Like
trillions of dollars, no marketplace movement. Fuck that.
Yeah, it'll be transitory. No, it won't. It'll be permanent inflation. Period. The other thing is, whenever they have these very broad swath bailout commitments, that could be for any reason. Like this is, in my opinion, this is just them covering what's probably going to be bank runs anyways in the next little bit, because there's so much insolvency in the banking system, like globally. not complete insolvency, but like they're underwater. If everybody wants to withdraw, they can't. So that's a big problem. And so this to me is just using crypto as a reason to just bail out banks instead of just saying, hey, we're going to bail out the banking system because we love our control and power over banking. And the lobby of the financial institutions is too strong. But a lot of their donors are banks or financial institutions. So they are somewhat beholden to them, which is ridiculous. It's the problem. It's exactly what we warn about all the time when these CBDC things happen, is this is the slippery slope.
This is what blockchain finance was for, right? The revolution of finance and some more free market play. And if your bank can't survive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. On other CBDC news, we're looking at the pilot program actually going super well in China. I mean, define super well, I don't know, but retail users are up and they have a lot of, I would say, pretty functional uses for their CBDC. So you can pay for your public transport. They have something called JD.com, which is their answer to Amazon. You can pay for all of your Amazon and Alibaba purchases that way.
And here I've been trying to get JD.com for me.
No, you can't have it. It's China's, literally China's. So they have quite a few so-called working use cases of their digital yuan, which is kind of cool and exciting. But the county of Changshu, it's kind of a city, kind of a county, but the whole county is actually looking at adopting CBDC full out. So the digital yuan, 100% is what you will get your salary in. It is 100% what you'll be able to pay in. There's about 1.5 million people in that area. So it is a pretty good use case scenario. It's not a particular tourism highlight. It's kind of on the eastern seaboard of China, a little bit inland, but near that eastern seaboard. So they're looking at how this can actually impact inland China, how rural people might interact with it, how smaller cities might interact with the digital yuan. It's actually kind of a good use case scenario. Now, of course, the news about it says that it's from the county itself. It's been driven by the county and that they want to be doing it. We never know if that's true. We're not sure exactly how people are actually receiving it, but according to the news, retail use cases are up, and this is probably the second most successful retail use CBDC right now, with the Bahamas Sand Dollar being the most.
Yeah. So I've got a lot of thoughts on this one. I mean, obviously, I'm not a huge fan of China having a CBDC because I think it's going to be the example that all the other countries aspire to, because they're going to have ultimate censorship and control and insight. That's the point. They're the Communist Party that is leading China. It's a communist government. So that means that everything is top down, generally speaking. And so the thought that this little county on their own decided, hey, this CBD sounds great. Let's force all of our like that, to me is no, this is just.
That's obviously not what actually happened, but it's kind of cool that it's being tested, you know?
I suppose it could be an example of how CBDCs could work. But again, I don't know how you protect yourself from the slippery slope as citizens. Like even in the most Western democratic countries, i.e. US and Canada, social media has become incredibly manipulated by political means. Whether you're left or right, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of oversight and censorship that's happening in our societies in the most democratic environments. Mm-hmm. Now, like, to think for a second that a communist regime or autocracy anywhere is going to be better at protecting their citizens is like, I mean, you're just lying to yourself. So it's good because I think it's going to show that, you know, meaningfully digital currencies, as long as they're widely accepted, are a lot more efficient for people and businesses. But it's what else comes along with that.
Okay, so one of the sentences I found while reading about CBDCs today was that they're partly being developed for when cash becomes unfavorable. And I find that a really interesting concept, because if you've ever met humans, cash is not unfavorable. Ever. Yeah. We love tangible things. We love artifacts. Even if we understand the full merit of having a completely digital society, we want our paper degrees and our metal coffee cups, and we want things that have weight to them, right?
Yeah.
So I haven't been able to find any actual information about what would make cash unfavorable, because even in times of high corruption, cash continues to be favorable because it's in your hands and you're in control of it. So is the concept here that cash becomes unfavorable for the government?
No, well, yeah. So there's kind of, sorry about this. Of course, they're cleaning right outside my office right now. But they this is an interesting one because what makes cash unfavorable? It makes it unfavorable to governments if they're exposed to sanctions, which is how the US had tried to police bad actors globally via SWIFT and other mechanisms. So cash is not favorable to China because they can't do anything they want with cash, and there's a bunch of AML and all this other crap. And they can't censor their citizens the same way and all that stuff. Cash becomes unfavorable to citizens when inflation becomes out of control, which is poor policy, right? Monetary policy.
Is that because of things like a bank bailout of $1.5 trillion?
Yeah, or green energy policies that are just a bunch of pork to all their pet projects all over the countries. Anyways, don't get me started on wasting money in government. But this one is frustrating because cash is only unfavorable if governments do dumb shit to make it unfavorable. Now, I can understand from China's perspective that they don't want their access to global markets to be determined by the US. I get that. You don't want to be beholden to some other superpower. But I mean, a CBDC is not going to change that if there's government censorship and or it can still be used for monetary policy, as i.e. inflation, printing the CBDC. Like if there's not like an imposed limit, like period, on how much can be like in circulation, then it's going to be no different. It's just going to be a much more censorship exposed version of cash. Like it's going to still have the same exposure to inflation. It's going to have the same exposure to manipulation. The only thing that they maybe can't do is sanctions, but at some point there's ways to sanction CBDCs too. Like that's also a misnomer.
Are CBDCs killing crypto?
No, but I think it's really, they're window dressing the concept right now. Like they're using all these like really broad statements to say, oh, unfavorable cash, we've got a solution. Oh, it makes it easier and cheaper. Let's use it. Like, no, that's not why you're doing it. Like, none of these countries are doing it for that reason. At least
are they rising crypto out of the ashes?
I don't know.
Okay, before we go, we talked about crypto being dead, right? It's died. There's nothing we can do about it. It's over.
Might as well pack up, go home.
Yeah. But as the phoenix that crypto is, later that day, we had some really big news in DeFi. So one example is a $17 million investment in a buy-side marketplace to bridge altcoins.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of money pouring into something that's dead. So I can't fathom that it's actually dead.
Yeah, that's a decent sized fundraise, especially in this market. Yeah. What is it? Theta Knots, I think it's called.
Theta Knots, yeah. So the idea here is that they are going to expand into buy side for altcoins.
Options. It's an options protocol, but yeah, this is interesting. I'd be curious if this. Again, I don't know a ton of this just came out, I think, this morning.
Yeah, this morning.
But I don't know a ton of details on it. But I have to assume that it's not a straight raise of 17 million for discretionary use. Like maybe there's some liquidity components of that. Like there's got to be something more to it. 17 million is a lot in this market.
There are some liquidity components. Honestly, there wasn't a lot of news out about it. I just thought it was interesting to touch on with the idea that crypto's died. But it's a great contrast. There's clearly interest in the future of yeah. And then likewise, we have some tech components coming up, such as Chainlink now with oracles. So
yeah. So one of the challenges that GMX had encountered, I think, was being a perps exchange, is that they need real-time pricing. And up until recently, Chainlink didn't necessarily offer, at least at mass scale for many tokens, that type of Oracle feed. And so GMX is pretty big. They've really started to make a splash in the space. I don't want to go too much more into it, but yeah, they're starting to make a splash. We'll see if it's sustainable. We'll see if it's something that works. But this is exciting. Obviously,
this is also exciting because in theory, it will be the first live transaction data about Arbitrum.
Yeah.
Like real-time live. It's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. So it should be
crypto's dead, but DeFi's alive. So I'm thinking that maybe like crypto like burnt down in America, but then is rising from the ashes as like a new being.
like a phoenix.
Like a phoenix.
Who knew? Anyways, yeah, no, I think, you know, there's a lot of good stuff happening. I talk about this all the time. I mean, I had a 3-hour conversation last night with a bunch of fairly accomplished academics that are building an incredible exchange technology that none of us have ever seen, both in trad markets and DeFi markets. And it's, you know, there's a lot of innovation happening. Blockchain and on-chain finance is not dead. Cryptocurrencies, which should not be conflated with blockchain, as we mentioned yesterday, they're two different things. Blockchain is the technology. Cryptocurrency is just the assets. But tokens and currencies are the ecosystem assets. Anyways, long story short, there's going to be a change in how we approach cryptocurrency based on whatever happens regulation-wise. But I think most people will agree that the innovation in blockchain technology and on-chain finance is increasing at an exponential rate, which is very, very exciting. That's it. That's all I got on that one. You're frozen again. All right. So since Kara got rugged,
like, subscribe, tomorrow, JD.
Do all that shit. Like, subscribe, share, help us, you know, spread the word to other people. Obviously, I will not be here tomorrow. We have a special guest from.
What are you going to wear to Consensus?
DeFi Kingdoms. What am I going to wear? I don't know. It's a surprise.
Yeah.
I have a.
Well, you got your Moonwell shirt on today. Yeah,
representing Moonwell. Shout out to the Moonwell brothers. I think it's all guys there still. Anyways, shout out to Moonwell, our friends at Moonwell. What am I going to wear at Consensus? I don't know. Hopefully I get some really good merch. I'm definitely going to take a bag and leave some room in my suitcase for all the merch that people want to give us. And I'm doing a talk on Thursday. Usually I wear something obnoxious when I'm doing talks. So we'll see. I'll plan it out. See what happens.
Go find yourself, JD.
Go find yourself, Kiara. Have a great day.